Welcome back to 2020. Today we are going to do a presentation in your school subject geography, what we have to call DES, Diploma in Secondary Education. And first I have to present Module 1, then I'll present Module 2. So, which means that those that are preparing for Module 1, first of all, you need to always, whenever you are given a question paper, make sure that you follow instructions so that you can able to gain marks. The course that you are doing is a course that most of the time they ask you either to compare or to make a difference between the two. Make sure that when you asked to compare, because most of your question it have to assess that objectives of comparison, make sure that you really have to use the comparison words, otherwise you are going to use to lose marks. And avoid using the term and, as I have to say over and over, that and is a conjunction word, it's not a comparison word, but the but that I'm using, or the while, or besides, those are the comparison terms that you are looking for. For example, if you are given a graph where you need to compare the relationship between the two, make sure that you concentrate on the two that appears on your questions. And if you have to describe a trend, you compare again by describing a trend, and on your graph, for example, you have more than 4 items, and they give you that specific 2 items, you make sure you compare only between those two. And you have to use statistics so that you can able to gain marks again. Always, as I have to say, look for the marks that are awarded at the end of each questions. Then you must provide answers that are equivalent or equal to marks allocated. Because if the question is having 6 marks, for example, that means that you need to provide 6 facts, so that, because each fact is standing on 1 marks. Some of the people, they just have to write one fact and they have to go around that one fact, and the question is asking or is having 6 marks, which is make it a problem. Another question again that I would like to bring to your attention is a question that have to ask you for a named area, country, whatever the case might be, that you study. Make sure that you name the area, because that is 1 mark you are losing already if you cannot name the area or the country. And then I will describe the phenomena as the question asks you to do. So now, those that are doing Module 1, if you know that you are doing Module 1, it means that you only prepare your question from Unit 1 to Unit 8. Because your syllabus covers up to 15 units, but it divided into Module 1 and Module 2. Therefore, Module 1 contains only Unit 1 up to Unit 8, and those are the units that we have to assess in Module 1, or in this paper that we set on Module 1. Let's continue and see what you're supposed to assess there, to study there. So let us look the topic under assessment. Those that are writing Module 1, is you that have to do the research and the map work. So, which means that you need to know the sampling methods that one can use to collect information for a geographical project. For example, the sampling method for selection is the random, the systematic, clustered, and so does the fourth. Make sure that you know their meaning and you know how to use them to select the population of your study. Otherwise, if you don't know that, then we have a problem. At the same time, again, you must know the advantage and the disadvantage of using one method over the other It depends on the definition of that method and on how you should use it to collect the sample or the population of your study. So therefore here, the topic that is now fall under Unit 1 to Unit 8, we are having a plate tectonics. And remember that before I go further, this entire topic that I have to present here, because down there you need just to read everything that is between Unit 1 to Unit 8, simply because that is where your question have to come from. Which means that here your work is cut short. It's not like you have to study for the entire 15 unit and you do not know which one is which. For Module 1 now, you are having a plate tectonic, whereby you have a volcano and the earthquake. You have to study the impact of it, the positive and the negative, and how differently they have to affect the different country due to their level of development. Because the developing country and the developed country are not affected in the same way by this phenomena, simply because you will find that a well-advanced developed country economically, they have the means how to handle with this emergency, while those that are like country like Namibia that we are developing, we do not really have the instrument even to measure or to assess or to predict exactly when it is going to happen. But those people are having those means that give them an advantage of removing all their people before the phenomena or the hazard strike. We can also look how they impact the environment. Some like volcano, it impacted them in both positive and negative. But when we look at earthquake, really we do not have anything that is positive or anything that is good that have to come with an earthquake. But with the volcano, for example, you will having a land that are used for farming due to the vegetation that is weathered, and it have to turn into the fertile, then the soil become fertile, so the farmer can use it for farming. You can have a land that have to be used, for example, for mining, because as a volcano happens, it have also to release resources like diamond and others. Then the people can stay there for mining, and at the same time they have to come with the formation of hot spring that could be used as an attraction to tourism. And at the end of the day, it have to bring an economic, positive economic benefit to the nation. You will also have now a question that you have to ask you, for example, those benefit and why do people choose to live closer to the areas of volcano or an earthquake, even though they happen to know the danger or they are warned. Make sure that you know all those things and they'll cover everything. Other thing that we have to look at there is the process. Could be now the coastal, river, or wind. But in this case, let's look at the river process, for example. You can now look at the formation of different features, like how a waterfall is being formed, a delta is being formed, and any other more. And those one have to happen as now erosional or depositional of material is happening as the river have either to carry its material downstream. So you must know those, which one fall under the erosional process, which landforms are formed as a result of erosion, and which one is formed as a result of deposition, as well as the slopes that have to come about on the Earth's surface as erosion or depositional is taking place. Then we also have to look at the weather instruments. When you have to study the weather instrument, make sure that you know what to use when you are measuring, for example, temperature, and how to use it and how to record. It's not just a matter of saying that this one is a minimum and a maximum instrument, that can be used maybe to measure temperature, but you cannot able to tell how one can use it to get so that they can able to get information out of it. In this paper of yours, you are having those questions usually based on, we give you a diagram, a figure, or a photograph, whereby we can ask you a question like, using figure either 1 or 2, describe or identify the feature that is shown in the photograph. You make sure that you must examine the picture in front of you and deduce the information from that picture, because if you use your own information and the answer is not taken from the sources in front of you, then it will not going to worth any marks. So therefore, be careful when we say use information from a source in front of you. Make sure that you really have to examine and see what is going on and take the answer of what you see so that you can able to gain marks. We have population that is also being covered in module 1 there, whereby we usually have to look at the Human Development Index, or the indicator that can be used to measure the development or the level of development of a country. As I said before, we can able to use the GNP or the GDP, health or education, and the other more. Now you look at the one that we can able to measure or to use to measure easily, and the difficult one that we can able to use also to measure the level of development. For example, when it comes to freedom is something that is so difficult to measure, because you cannot know really the level. You might say that people are happy, but they are not happy. Those are now a good example of a development indicator that is difficult also to measure the level of the country's development. But when it comes to things like now education, access to clean water, and so does the fourth, those are easier one. And you must always tell us that why do you have to say this? This one is easy to use and this one is difficult to use. You make sure that you have to use the development studies module that NANCO have to provide, because this topic is covered in a large context in that these study books. At the same time, when you do with population, make sure that that is where you have to touch your population growth. That is where you have to touch the terminology like the birth rate and the death rate, fertility rate, and the others. And remember, when a terminology is, we ask you to define something that is having a rate at the end of it, it means that your answer must include the average. Otherwise, if you just have to say, I say define the term birth rate or life expectancy, and they will just say a number of years a person expected to live, then that is not, the rate is now being excluded out of that answer. But if you put the average now, it means that you also describe that rate of that rate as a definition to show that is the average of out of 10, how many of people is counted, or out of 1,000, for example. So on that module 1, that's also where you have a topic where you have to cover the natural vegetation. The natural vegetation here, make sure that it's the climatic vegetation, where we have a tropical desert, a tropical rainforest, the Mediterranean, and others. So down there, when you have to study those topics, make sure that you will be able to associate this vegetation with the climate. Means that you have to look at the adaptability of the animal that you find in that specific area, as well as the adaptability of the vegetation. How do they survive in relation to the climate that they live in? How do they adapt, in short? So again, you must also take note of the human activity that are taking at those specific areas, and you make sure that how do this thing or the human activity place this area into risk, and at the same time you must also go further and read and see how can we solve this problem so that we can conserve this natural vegetation. Because at the end I might ask a question like, identify a human activity that put maybe a desert area at risk. Then at the end of the day I have to ask you also, explain further how can we conserve this desert or this tropical vegetation area. You make sure that you really have to read and go depth and cover everything that is on that specific topic under the unit that you are studying. Because remember that you have unit, but under those units there is a lot of different subtopic that is being covered, and they'll make sure that you really have to study and understand them. At the same time, you also need to look at the types of weathering as well as their process. The main weathering, those that we have to say is physical, for example, is biological. Process that are falling under those types of weathering, like now the plant and animal that have to help with the process of biological weathering, and the landform that have to remain there. At the same time as you have to study this weathering and their process, you must also understand the main characteristics of soil profile in any tropical ecosystem, as well as the development of landform, as I said before, the out product after the process happens. But make sure that you know how the process happens. And then you must also be able to identify it when you find it either in a photograph or in a diagram that is in front of you. You cannot just study them without knowing them. When we present you with a picture, because we can ask a question to identify a process and then describe how it happens, which means that if you cannot now identify it in that picture, of course there's no way that you can able to describe a process that you do not know how it looks like in a picture. So therefore you must know that when you are given information or the sources in front of you, more specifically in geography, you must make sure that those information are not there for decorations, but they are there to provide you with your answer. They are there to guide you. So what you have to do, just make sure that you are not leaving answers that are in the diagram in front of you simply because you cannot interpret what is, or you cannot examine what is presented before you. Make sure that you must make a use of it and develop the skill of interpreting what is being presented before you. Then we also have to look at the topic of ecosystem and how it is being related to the soil formation, whereby we need to look at the main characteristics of soil profile in any tropical economic system. Because this development of soil, we can ask you to describe it, either it is for a desert area, it is for a tropical rainforest area, or any area of the natural vegetation, because we want to see as the process of either weathering is taking place there. Those things, you have to connect them together. As weathering is taking place, we know that the end process must be soil. This type of soil now is what we call the soil profile. How does it now have to it is being formed in that specific tropical ecosystem, and at the same time, is it the soil that one can able to use, for example, to be able to plant, soil that can might be having some minerals underneath it, and so does the phosphorus. Therefore, you must know even at what layer or up to which layer one needed to cultivate, for example. Now, as I told you before, I only have to highlight the main points that you need to look at, but make sure that you study really every subtopic that fall under those main unit I happen to highlight there. But make sure that you read in deep to understand. As I said, you can make use of the grade 10 and the 12 NANCOL booklet. They can make you understand what is being presented there in your own study guide that you cannot able to use. But at the same time also, you must use your own study guide that the institution provided to you. In this case, it's a study guide that is written school subject geography. You make sure that when you are preparing for your examination, when you are preparing to write your assignment, you must use your book, and you can also get some help from the NANCOL booklet for grade 10 and 12. Your study guide book is the one that is being compiled by Dr. Witt, and it was compiled in 2013. And your development study one is just those NANCOL booklet, writing the booklet. Could be question and answer, could be the booklet that you just have to study in detail. So, and that one for NANCOL that I put there, I would like you to use it when you have to come about or to come at the part of human development index. And please make sure that you know how to define different types of terminology that you will find there, because most of the time 50% of your paper is being covered by a recall assessment question and answers. So anyway, good luck with your study and good luck for doing your assignment. I believe that when you start, you can always consult me. And the consultation time is between 5 and 8 at the night. That is a bit where I'm free. And make sure that when you call where you need an answer that I can able to guide you, but do not call because you want me to do an assignment for you. I can only guide you on how you can go about it so that you can able to find your answer. And at the same time again, make sure that module 1 is a module that have to assess you on the map work. And when you are given questions that are now based on map work, make sure that the institution really provide you with a map work, and your map, with a map, and your map must be printed in a A3 paper, and it must be in color, so that you can able to see the landform that is being presented in that map. Otherwise, if it is black, you will not able to answer the question that are based on map work. Again, with a research paper, make sure that you make use of grade 12 paper 3 questions. Those are now questions that we ask in where we have to assess the research. When you make use of those one, then surely you will going to be fine. Right. Good luck with your study again.